Hundreds of Tibetans gather at the Chinese consulate in New York on 42nd Street. These protests arise from a deep resentment towards the Chinese government that has been building up for the last 57 years since China has occupied Tibet. China and Tibet have a long history of conflict, causing dispute over when they've been unified. In 1951, Tibet's capital Lhasa was invaded by the People's Republic of China, which was led by Mao Zedong. The Chinese military overpowered the Tibetans, who were forced to sign an agreement that integrated Tibet into the People's Republic of China. The Chinese government controlled the Tibetan people and denied them the right to religious freedom. They would imprison and torture any Tibetan monks who disobeyed. Over the years, this built up tensions, which led to conflict between Tibetan guerrillas and the Chinese military. On March 10, 1959, a full-scale Tibetan uprising took place, which acted as cover for the Dalai Lama, who escaped from Lhasa to Dharamsala in India, where he has remained ever since. Recently, on March 10, 2008, violent protests broke out in Lhasa on the 49th anniversary of the 1959 Tibetan uprising. Several hundred monks gathered and demanded the return of the Dalai Lama. In response, the Chinese military was sent in to suppress it. Protests have been occurring around the world. In New York City, there are weekly candlelight vigils and protests in front of the Chinese consulate in the United Nations every day.
What is the goal of your organization?
Our goal is to restore complete independence for the whole of Tibet.
And what sort of audience do you tend to reach out to?
We intend to reach everyone, both Chinese and Tibetan supporters. We basically want the world to know what the truth is, because truth has to prevail, and so long as we achieve in telling this truth to the people of the world, they'll come to know better of the Tibetan situation.
Okay, and what is the current Tibet situation that has started all these recent protests?
That is how the communist government in China and in Tibet, how they are treating the ordinary Tibetans in Tibet, is the main root cause of the current day unrest in Tibet. This among Tibetans, there's a deep resentment of the prolonged repression under the Chinese government. So they can't keep that any longer within themselves. So that whole exploded since March 14.
And do you feel like you're getting the message out there to people?
Yes, definitely. Because since March 14, ever since that major protest broke out in Tibet, the news has reached almost every corner of the world, and we are getting supports from all over the world now, and everyone knows that we are fighting for the just cause, for a truth. So we are getting so much support.
These protests have been growing in size and frequency, and in New York, for example, almost every day there is a protest outside the Chinese consulate or the United Nations, or a vigil in Union Square, and the number of Tibetans and supporters who are turning up for these events have steadily increased, and on weekends it sometimes comes there, like, you see about 2,000 to 3,000 people attending a protest outside the Chinese consulate, and today, for example, you probably had like 500 Tibetans and supporters standing here in solidarity to mourn the Tibetans who have been killed in this crackdown.
And what is the significance of the candlelight vigil?
We observe tonight's candlelight mainly for two purposes. Firstly, to observe the 19th birthday of, and secondly, to show our solidarity with those Tibetans who lost their life since March 14th of this year. After the death of someone, all his family members, all his friends, all his close ones, they gather every 7th day of their death to observe a special ritual where they pray for the peaceful resting of his soul.
We are demonstrating for people's lives. We are working literally against the clock for people's lives. You have to understand that right now, I mean, we don't know the exact counts, and because China has closed off the border to Tibet, we don't know exactly what's happening, but we do know already that 200 people have been brutally murdered. We know that there are thousands that have been imprisoned. We know from 50 years of occupation, we know what fate awaits those folks that have been imprisoned. We know exactly what to expect, and we are demonstrating to get attention and to get, attention from the world before China has its way with these people.